Hi everyone, so today we are going to be taking a look at the Pilea Peperomoides, or it is commonly known as the Chinese money plant, I believe. It is a very popular houseplant that came to light, I believe, in the 90s, and it was kind of hard to get your hands on. And then it kind of became more accessible in the houseplant community. It's a pretty easy houseplant to care for, all things considered. Sometimes it can be a little bit finicky, which you can see mine has some issues right now, which we'll get into. But these are very prolific growers, very interesting foliage as well, and they reproduce like mad, which is really interesting. So if you're looking for a plant that within a year or two is going to push out a lot of new babies and you can kind of fill out your space using the same plant, the Pilea is a good choice for you. In addition, the Pilea would be a good choice for you if you have a lot of bright indirect light. I have seen my plant handle even some bright direct light as well. It can scorch the foliage, but it has a pretty waxy kind of cuticle here and a relatively thicker leaf. I would hedge to bet that these guys can handle a little bit of direct light as well. And just from my experience, they tend to do pretty well with that. Humidity-wise, just regular house humidity. These guys don't prefer anything special. And they do grow very often in like a rocky substrate or things like that. Oftentimes you can see them natively clinging onto other plants or things like that in kind of weird places, which would indicate to us as plant parents that we definitely need to have this plant in a very well-draining soil. So I would absolutely recommend something that's high in a chunkier substrate to allow proper drainage. So something with some orchid bark in there or quite a bit of perlite and or sand would be very beneficial as well. And that being said, watering is relatively straightforward as well. I treat my Pilea Peperomoides like it is a succulent. So I only water it whenever it's completely dry, and you will see signs of dehydration with this plant as well. As this plant dehydrates, you are going to see the leaves start to droop even a little bit more. You know, they have this kind of droopy style to begin with, but they'll definitely begin to droop down even further and become a little wilted and a little limp, and that will be my indication that I need to water this plant. Common problems you might have with your Pilea, as you can see here, we have some yellowing foliage, and this is most likely due to a lack of nitrogen. So I'm going to be sure to give this guy a healthy dose of fertilizer here, especially during the growing season. I wouldn't really recommend fertilizing these guys on their off season unless you do have very obvious signs of nutrient deficiency. So yellowing leaves are a common problem. Another common problem that we can see here are these leaves kind of going in on themselves. Oh, and the veininess is also an indication of a nutrient deficiency as well. Sometimes you can see the leaves kind of going in on themselves. If you are underwatering or overwatering your plant, that can be an indication of that as well. But more often than not, your healthy foliage is going to look very even, flat, green, like these leaves here are all pretty healthy. And that is kind of the standard that you are going to see with your money plant. So I'll insert a clip here. You can see how quickly these guys reproduce. This started as a little baby in a little 2-inch planter last year. About a year ago I got this plant, and I already have like 6 or 7 babies in the pot here. You can let these guys just grow up and kind of become little accessory plants around the outside of your pot, or you can definitely go in and cut them out and harvest them and transplant them. You can do that as well. But just be aware that they're going to be kind of competitive and compete for light as these babies grow up, but they don't necessarily mind being a little root bound. And I've even seen, I know like Plantarina has a Pilea that's hanging in her garage that has a baby coming out of the bottom of the pot, and that is very indicative of how these plants work. They reproduce like mad, and yeah, they are pretty satisfying to grow as well. So I think that pretty much covers it. I haven't had any pest problems with my Pilea, although you could definitely just use some neem oil or spray them off with the hose. Just making sure you're cleaning off your foliage every once in a while to allow maximum photosynthesis. And yeah, let me know if you guys have any questions. Relatively straightforward. Treat this guy like a succulent whenever you're watering it. Give it lots of bright indirect to even a small amount of bright direct light, and it should be happy with you. And make sure you're fertilizing, especially if you see any veininess or any yellowing of the leaves or anything like that. All right, everyone, I will see you later. Bye-bye.